Welcome back, wannabes and creators, to another episode of The Business of Art, the podcast that demystifies business for artists. And today I have Ben Templesmith on the show. Ben is a New York Times best-selling author and artist for 30 Days of Night, and he's a convention warrior. Before we get into it, I want to remind you that you can get the first chapter of my new book, Sell Your Soul: How to Build Your Creative Career, absolutely free, by heading to GoSellYourSoul.com. All I need is your email, and you will get the first chapter for free. Also, don't forget to join our Facebook group, Writers and Creators Making Money Selling Books, by heading over to writingandsellingcommunity.com. All right, now that that's out of the way, let's get on with the show. Take it away, Ben. Tell us what you're passionate about these days.
What am I passionate about? Making the books I want to make as a creator. And then actually, I'm probably passionate about empowering creators in general. It is my firm belief, and the thing that drives me generally, is that the only person, well, the person who should benefit the most from any creative work they make is them. I don't mind anyone else taking a cut, which is normal, but they should be the major beneficiaries. And that's not really the case, and hasn't historically been the case in comic books. So I would like that to change.
I would love that to change too. I mean, it's really, yeah, I mean, it's tough because there's so many people on the, well, comics are incredibly expensive and time consuming to make at the first part. Mm-hmm. Just at the very beginning part, I know friends who are writing novels and they're writing 6 to 10 a year and they're putting them out. And I'm like, what? That kind of pace, just you can't even do without breaking every bone in your body as an artist and a writer,
Well, I put out roughly 12 issues a year, I guess, of content work-wise. I mean, you don't always see that because it's in multiple projects, but I'm pretty prolific. I work on 3 projects at a time usually.
That you sound like the artist for my first book who would stack books, books back to back to back, or like on top of each other. So I would have 6 to 8 months where I didn't hear from him. Then I'd get like this beautifully rendered full issue or 2 issues like at the same time.
Yeah. Well, I generally, if you want to talk the economics of it, I think floppies, and I call them floppies, are still important because they provide, obviously some people still like the episodic format, but it pads the way for you to still eat while you're completing the work. And then once you've completed the work, then you have this fantastic big chunk of everything that you can give properly and at a higher price point because it's the whole thing. But that's honestly the payday. But I don't actually just work on like graphic novels and only release it once as the actual graphic novel. I don't think I could afford to. I don't understand the economics of how that truly works because some people do want an issue. So, and and then they want to collect it. So that still works out for me. And I know floppies are sort of going down, but we shall see.
Yeah, I mean, for me as the publisher and like the person who does all of it, the floppies just don't have a great enough margin for me to risk it because I don't have the distribution network to like print at that kind of scale and distribute at that kind of scale.
Yes, you do. You can do every Diamond, the direct market is only one market. So I go through, this is getting into my business plan. I go through 2, I think of it as 3 markets. I think of, because I have a Patreon or Patreon, however you say it. If people don't know what that is, it's kind of like a mini Kickstarter from month to month. But essentially, it's kind of like I would call it a fan club, a pay gateway fan club, where you give these people, the dedicated hardcore, I'd say crazy people because it's my work, an experience and something every month, even if it's just online. But I do, generally speaking, my projects say I would do 2 pages a week for however long that project goes. And then every say, I print myself. It's on-demand printing though, so it's not the true offset printing, which is the best quality, fancy stuff printing. 42-page perfect bound. They're not floppies, but they're not graphic novels either. But they're a good chunk. So I do longer form floppies really, And because they're so exclusive, I only print a few hundred, and they're mostly for the patrons. And then I just, I can sell the rest at cons because no one's heard of the book. That provides enough income to keep doing the whole thing. And then at the end, I'm rambling, but I've got the completed tome of book, and then I can take it to the second market, which would be a Kickstarter or something like that, where I can offer a complete package. And obviously, when you get to a Kickstarter, you do have to use generally a real printer, an offset printer, and that costs a lot more. But even for 1,000 copies, which sounds a lot, but isn't really in the scheme of things, or 500, because you wouldn't sell them all initially. I'd say you can profit-wise make as much as selling, say, 5,000. I'm rounding up, 5,000 in the direct market, and the direct market is just the last resort, because that's for everyone that's never heard of you necessarily, but sees something on a shelf, or goes to the people that only go to comic shops and they don't do the online stuff much. So there's more work involved, but I say there's 3 stages and 3 markets. And yeah, sorry, I'll stop rambling now.
No, I want you to ramble, but when you go to the direct market at the end, are you bringing single issues to them, or
yes.
you just bring that trade?
Oh, I would always do single issues first to them, because, these are people that, generally speaking, and I am generalizing, we all do. Russians are good at making the trains run. The French are the American stereotypes of the French. It's very, stereotypes aren't really true, but they're an indicator. The direct market people go into comic shops, right? Most of them have never heard of the book I've been working on for a year on Patreon and then as a Kickstarter. They didn't know. So offering them, I like floppies. I like doing covers and doing fancy things as a new experience. So I offer it as floppies first through them, because that's the standard way of the direct market, and then just a regular trade right at the end. So the end point for me is a trade through the direct market, probably through IDW or another publisher that I have a relationship with.
Right, but before then, so basically you're building your campaigns, and you're building your books in 3 stages. The first is sort of like the day-to-day book that is part of the Patreon.
Well, that's the most exclusive fancy book, because I actually sign and number the damn things. They're very first printing exclusive with a different cover and maybe extra content, lots of back material. So they're getting a deluxe floppy, and then I do a deluxe graphic novel collection, I guess, through the Kickstarter, which is usually a hardcover and slipcase and everything like that. And then I just do they're like the iPod, Apple, Mac people, and then everything else is just Android.
Right. So the people who are early adopters are the people on your Patreon and Kickstarter, and then you're doing kind of a mass market regular edition, which I'm making an assumption, but the books have probably earned enough to be profitable by the time they get past the Kickstarter, including your time, and that direct market is just sort of a bonus.
Yeah, it's the payoff, I guess you'd say. It's the bit that will hopefully help me get back on my feet, because I've been rather poor for quite a while. But what I'm selling in the first 2 stages, you could say, is an experience. I mean, I give them prints, and I actually, when I do them, especially the Patreon stage, I'm giving them in wax-sealed envelopes with lots of other goodies. So I'm trying to give people an experience and something very special. And then so too at the Kickstarter stage. And then the direct market is just for everyone else, if that makes sense. It's just for the people that either didn't know me or don't follow me much but like the book, and they just pick up the book. And it's a much cheaper level, really. But, yeah.
Right. I mean,
it makes everyone happy.
This is very interesting, because this is something that I've been looking into as a person who has only had this hardcover books for my books for a while. We produced 2 graphic novels and now an anthology as well, and they're all coming in hardcover, for this exclusive subset of people. And I've been looking at different publishers and different printers on how to do sort of a mass market, cheaper version with maybe a mass market paperback and then single issues. And it's just a very interesting process to see, this is kind of how your process has been. For how long have you been doing the Patreon? How long have you been doing it in these few stages?
I want to say I've done about 2 years, I'd say, for the Patreon. But I could tell you, and this is before Patreon existed, the first project I did where I wrote and drew it and did a Kickstarter, it was pretty successful. I just wish I'd kept most of the money. But it went to a company I helped form. I did zero, like, and then I went to IDW, say, and I did literally zero promotion. I didn't even mention it. Because I was busy with other things. So it just was a thing that came out through the direct market. And it still had the best sales of anything I've written and drawn myself that I've ever had, numbers-wise, for the floppies. And so it's just a thing that runs itself, you know. It's got the whole preview system and comic stores, and, like, you know, luckily they know my name enough, I guess. So yeah, it was on autopilot after that. So it worked out. And then soft covers are a bit cheaper to produce. But there's very different markets, I'd say. Hardcover people are a particular kind of people as well. So, I mean, IDW have done a bunch of my books in hardcover as well, and, like, they still sell. So it's like a lot of people want a hardcover. So, and that's becoming the norm, which is nice, because that's like France or something, who only do hardcovers pretty much.
Right. I was at Denver, and someone came up and said, "Do you have a paperback version of this?" And I was like, I guess on my website, but, like, I could give you a discount to, like, what the paperback, and they're like, "No, I actually prefer the paperback format." And I was like, huh.
I haven't had too many of those. Mostly it's the other way around.
I haven't had most people that want the book in print want, like, I can see, like, the hardcovers are like the upper echelon, they're like the upgrade to everything. And when people come and say, well, I'd rather have a paperback, and it happens, I don't know, maybe once every 3 or 4 months at a show, and I go, really? Because, like, the paperback is just going to fall apart. Like, these hardcovers are made to last. Like, that's their job, is to last.
Yeah, they're a real book.
Right, exactly. I mean, I was talking with a friend of mine the other day, and she was, I was like, you know, of all the things about hardcovers, the one thing that I'm going to sound kind of shallow when I say this, I was like when I got the hardcover books in my garage, it was like, I was like, oh, I feel like I've made it a little bit, because, like, a hardcover is what, like, I'd always imagined as, like, a 10-year-old kid, like, authors, like, books are hardcover. Like, don't touch Daddy's hardcover books. They're up here. You can touch these books. So having them is like a kind of magical experience for me on both sides, not just buying them, but also just having my book in them.
Yeah, I mean, I would prefer a hardcover collection, like a quintessential collection, to just a few softcover graphic novels. If I could get the whole thing in a hardcover, I'd probably go for that.
Yeah.
Myself. Just because I'm a completist and I know I have the whole thing and I can read it at my leisure. So I don't have to go and buy another volume or anything like that.
Right, and usually the hardcovers have, like, a little bit extra in them. Like, like you said before, like, the hardcovers are for, like, the collector fans, like, the hardcore fans, where I like myself a trade, too, because they're cheaper. They have a lower entry point. They get me into a series. I never would have read, like, Bitch Planet if I didn't have that $10 trade that Image puts out. But, like,
well, exactly. You need the taste before you go for the big
exactly.
thing.
And like you said, there's markets. There's all sorts of different markets that you can set up. And, you know, to listen to you talk, as I'm riding the wave of thinking about starting a Patreon myself, like you're turning some wheels in my head, some more wheels in my head that hadn't been turned before, also. Because I'd always worried that the people that backed the Kickstarter, that people that backed the Patreon, then weren't going to back the Kickstarter, and I was just going to be moving money around from one place to another.
Well, the two things of that is, those are the most dedicated people ever. They're basically, for me, they literally are my patrons. They're people that have shelled out a bunch of money month after month to watch me make a book and to get a special version. But I'm offering on the Kickstarter a different version. If you're offering the same version, well, then they definitely have no reason to back the Kickstarter either. But some do, and they tell me, and it's like, thank you. But you want to offer something different at each step of the way. Because I think most people are confused. They think don't believe you're selling comic books. You're selling an experience. And it's all about the experience you can offer them, I think. When they open the book or get the book in the mail, what else do they get, and how, you want to make people feel special. You want to put some time. If they can think, if it looks like you've put time into what you're giving them, that breeds a loyalty that it's well beyond just a consumer product, I think. Because I don't just I'm not in it for the money. I'm in it for passion first and foremost. So
How much extra time do you put into how much time do you put into the Patreon every month?
A lot. For a long time, it was not for a long, for a period of time, it was pretty much all I did, which was manageable, very manageable, because I do a lot of in it. I don't just offer digital rewards, which is the easiest way to do. It's sort of fire and forget, and then you put it up and it's done. But I offer a lot of, say, monthly, which I'm a little behind on because of cons, but monthly prints. I physically mail out prints, and then every quarter or so, maybe 4 months, they'll get a collected volume of the issue that I finished in a 42-page, like I said, perfect bound comic book.
And that
prestige format, I guess you'd call it.
And that's never like nobody else can get that except people on the Patreon.
Yes.
Well, I mean, except for like I'm sure you're printing a little bit of extra for selling at shows.
Well, I print editions of 500 for a first issue and 200 for every issue after that. But the patrons get like the special wax sealed envelope. Because the book's got tentacles in it, so I call it a squid pack, and there's various levels of squid pack. So you'll get a pack with a sticker and a button and a couple of prints as well as the book. And then the step above, you'd get a special hand-painted print that I've done as well. And then the top ones will get an original page of art with it as well. Things like that, or they'll get drawn in the book. And only the patrons can get those, but I don't sell squid packs at cons, but I will sell just the printed material at cons. And what else was I going to say? I actually also have a dedicated Patreon web store just for the patrons. So depending on if you only want to see the process and the pages as they come, it's like $2 a month, say. But then the patrons that have backed me at a higher level, they're getting a printed copy. But after they've got theirs, the copies left, the next phase is to put them on the Patreon-only store, which all patrons have access to. And so for a bit of a higher price, well, because they didn't back it at the thing, then they can still have the opportunity to buy the special Patreon-only thing. And then really after that, what's left after a certain time, my main web store will offer the rest of it at a more retail price, a higher price.
Right.
So if they still really want it. So it's a good way to clear out the extras, and it makes everyone happy so far.
Right. So
once they get the book.
Right, of course. So the people that are getting it on the Patreon are getting all of these extras and the book for cheaper than the people on the Patreon store, and then they're getting it for cheaper than people on the regular store.
Yeah. If you're a patron of mine, my Patreon only store has it's just always at a discount anyway. But the people that back me at a higher level definitely paid for their stuff, and so they just get it. And then people at lower tiers or levels can still choose to buy it if they want. So.
Right. I mean, I'm looking on your page. I had to sneakily type in so it wouldn't come across on the microphone. But I'm actually looking on your Patreon store right now, and it's one of the most interesting of all the ones that I've ever seen. So you're working on.
I literally changed it last week because I'm starting a new project this week.
Right. So you have Wormwood, Little Devils, and Black Holers. Are those the three that you're talking about alternating between, or is there another new one now?
Well, those were the three I was working on for about a year. I just finished Wormwood and Black Holers on the Patreon, so they're done, and that's why I've swapped over now to a new project called Original Hate, which I haven't even started promoting yet, that I'm starting to do it. And the Little Devils one is an art book, so I just do a few images a month for it and show them time-lapse videos and stuff, the process of it. So that's still ongoing. That'll be ongoing for about this year. So.
And the Little Devils, the time-lapse, are they exclusive to the Patreon too, or can anyone see those?
No, they're exclusive to the patrons. They get their own access code and everything.
This is blowing my mind a little bit. I'm trying to keep asking you questions as I'm going through this page and going this is a great way to do a Patreon. I've seen a lot of people who frankly offer these exclusive prints, and they generally are porn, and that's not
Patreon is very big for the shall we say erotic arts?
Yeah, or they'll do a not safe for work version of a regular print or a character that they have or some other thing. But there's
a lot of cosplayers on there that actually aren't really cosplaying. They're just showing off assets, shall we say.
Yes, but this is not that.
They're big on. They make a lot of money.
But this is not that. This is like you have like a whole like tiered business model and like things to help the Patreons.
Yeah. I treat it like a Kickstarter, honestly. It's like if you want to back me at the basic level, you get a whole bunch of still exclusive stuff, but it just, it goes up from there. The trick with Patreon is most of it, I mean, it works when you're going to do something anyway. Like you've set your heart on it. You want to do this thing. So all you're doing is documenting and showing other people what you're already doing. And that's the best way to do it. But I do dedicated things for them. So.
Right. I mean, it makes so much sense. I always tell people when they're doing art, like when people say, how do I get more out of a day? I say, are you recording your art yet? So you can put them up as speed paintings and all these other things and stacking so you're doing something one time, but you can use it 6 times. And they go, no. I'm like, well, start there because now I just increased your workload by 600% or your bandwidth by 600% because now you're drawing one thing and using it in all these other places. And you have a pretty similar model, it sounds like, on this Patreon page.
Well, I'm not saying I'm not by any means a genius and I'm not by any means an expert, but it's just smart to having only to draw one thing once and capitalize on it multiple times. That's a business model. That means you can eat and pay your rent. So, and I've run into a lot of people that don't really understand anything on the business money side, which is really sad. But now I understand why many artists are kind of screwed over on contracts and in careers in general sometimes because they do bad deals. But wow, I just sounded like Trump. They do bad deals.
But I mean, you're not wrong because I tell everybody when I make them sign a contract, I'm like, this contract is geared towards me. You need to look at it and tell me what you need to change. And about 80% of the time, I'll just get a signature back, even though I told them that this was a bad deal for them because they were just excited or for some reason, I don't know why they don't look over the contract, but I get the contracts back in way less time than it could take somebody to legitimately read through them.
Yeah, I mean, some things people should ask for, or that, I mean, you get what you're interested out of the deal. But if you're a clever artist or creator in the first place, there's things that you could ask for to make sure they're okay with, obviously contractually or whatever, that you don't care about, but that artist could capitalize on, like the process work. At some point, I get very nervous if I'm doing a work for hire job and they want print resolution of my process work. I was like, well, the process is my process. If you want to buy that as well, that's potentially money for me now because people are just interested watching me do it. Although obviously you maybe can't show it at the time because the book hasn't come out and NDAs and stuff. But things like that you want to factor in. So I mean, you could capitalize on it, but when if I can capitalize on it too.
So let's can you give some concrete examples besides the one that you just talked about, the process of things that an artist should or could ask for that would really benefit them?
Man, I'm not an expert.
I know.
I've seen plenty of bad
Neither
deals.
of us are legal experts. This is just our colloquial opinion. Go and ask a real legal expert. Okay, now we got that out of the way.
Yeah, I've never really had a lawyer look over any of my contracts. But I like them in plain English too. But I've signed plenty that I didn't really understand. Because it's for a large company, it's fine. I just do the art. I get paid, and you get to do whatever you want because I know it's a big thing. That's fine. But one thing I wish I'd learned a few years earlier, well, in my career, was what reversion rights are. And that means when you do a book, say, and it goes out of print, well, if the publisher's not going to keep printing it, you get all your rights back, and you could either take it somewhere else or do what you want with it because then you control it. And I would also say creator-owned doesn't always necessarily mean creator-controlled, but it should by implication, but it doesn't in practice. So I've got a few older deals where it's creator-owned work, but it's not creator-controlled in the sense of other rights or whose opinion is the most important when it comes to, say, making a movie out of your work or something like that, and all the middlemen you have to deal with instead of well, it's my book, why can't I just do what I want? If someone comes and approaches me and says they want to do something, I'm like, yeah, great. So I would say bear that in mind in contracts sometimes. But leverage is everything, and every art creator is different and at different points in their career. So not everyone can ask for everything. And it's a minefield. and I am not a lawyer. So
yes, I'm gonna add one more, which is what out of print means.
Oh, out of print. Well, that's a debatable thing these days. I don't like, because of the world of digital now, I don't consider digital in print, obviously, because it's not in print. But a publisher could argue that means, oh, no, we're still offering your book. It's available. It's on like Comixology or somewhere. It's like, yeah, but you're stopping, like, I can't, sell it at conventions, or people can't find it in bookstores, and that's real money. And that actually goes through, generally speaking, sometimes less middlemen than the online digital side, because you've got publishers, you've got the online store where it's sold, and then you've got the online publisher and all sorts of things like that. So in print means it is available, in simplistic terms, probably available at a Diamond warehouse, like they have some in stock that they can ship to comic stores and bookstores. Because if that doesn't happen, you don't get this thing called royalties if you're a creator. And so every quarter or so, you'll get a statement, whatnot, saying, oh, we sold 50 books, which doesn't sound like much, but if they're hardcovers or collections, that adds up to a little bit, maybe a couple of $100 a quarter. But if you have, say, 10 graphic novels that are in print and still available, and they're all selling like 100 copies each or whatever, that actually provides you, the creator, from your past work with a passive income that allows you to build your back catalog and actually live. I mean, you want to actually expand as you go because you've done all this work. It shouldn't just be a dead book 6 months after you've done it. You know what I mean? Because not everyone in the world's heard of it. So keeping things in print for me is actually an important thing, and it should be for anyone that's building a back catalog of creator-owned work.
I mean, they say that you make your living as a writer on your back catalog, not on like the book that's coming out, but on how that new book lifts up all the old books, and those are the book. That's how you're making like your passive income living.
If you're smart,
yeah.
Because say you release volume 5 of your book, but the publishers let the other 4 go out of print. Well, volume 5, people go, oh, I like this. Where's the rest? And they can't get it, which is ridiculous. So that has been an ongoing struggle sometimes with publishers. Like I would do a print run myself just to keep it in stock. I've offered to invest in my own properties. So because if you look at it in the scheme of things, though, and I'm sorry, I'm not trying to dirty mouth publishers, and I know you're a publisher, but say $300 a quarter isn't terribly much to some publishers in the scheme of things, but that means an awful lot to a human being who's created that book. And you multiply that by several more volumes, that's actually a bit more, So there's costs, but you look at the long tail economics of it, and that's where the payoff is for a creator. So, because we're building something, we're not just doing a wham bam thank you ma'am job where you clock in, clock out every day. We're trying to build something, and a good book can sell for the next 100 years.
Yeah, I always say make it once, sell it forever. And it's okay. My job on this program is to badmouth publishers. So, like, it's okay. I'm
not badmouthing them, but I understand the business logic of everyone.
Right. But I should just obviously as me. So I was listening to someone talk about out of print, and he said that a good legalese thing, or like what you should be looking for is a book hasn't sold X copies in print in Y amount of quarters means that it is out of print. So even if the book is in print and it has, let's say your number is 500 or 300, if it hasn't sold 300 copies in 3 consecutive quarters, it is considered out of print, and you can get the rights to revert back to you. That's what he said. A good wording was.
If you can get away with it, that's great. But I feel bad for the publisher then, because if there's a bunch of unsold copies at a warehouse, that's fine. Like, give me my rights back, and I have the property to do with what I want again because it's not selling. But I should probably have to buy those extra copies back, which probably would make sense because I want the book back. So that'd be fine, because then I could sell them at conventions. Because if you think about it, a good creator actually has more reach than a publisher, because the creator is the ground floor guy who goes out and meets fans, or girl, and meets fans. So I want my own product, my own stuff, to be able to sell to those people or show those people. And a publisher doesn't have that much reach. Yeah, they do cons and they sometimes have, booths and stuff, but people want the experience with the creator, not honestly with the publisher. The publisher is just the distribution.
Right. I mean, they're making their money on printing a whole bunch of things and getting a little piece of all of them, Whereas like
Yeah.
any creator by themselves you're right, has more reach. They can do more stuff individually, but a publisher makes their money by like having 500 titles out at any time and 2,000 books in their back catalog instead of like a creator who has like 5 or 10 or 20.
Yeah, so those 500 copies that are just sat with them in a warehouse, which is actually costing them money, and I understand that. They may not be doing anything for the publisher, but they could do great for me. I mean, I can bring 50 to a con, every con, and probably sell through them eventually because I'm giving an experience on top of that rather than just having them sat in a warehouse and seeing numbers on a spreadsheet eventually, which is very unpersonal and not why I want to create in the first place.
Right, exactly. And I would say that usually when rights reversion happens, any books that are in a warehouse, like they can still sell those copies. Like that's why you see.
Oh, right.
So like that's why you see in certain books, if you like look on Amazon, there'll be like 2 or 3 different versions, like from Titan and Tor, because like someone got a rights reversion from one and then went to another or something like that. But again, I'm not a lawyer either. I can say
in that case, I'd offer to buy them back because they'd still be worth more to me than probably the publisher. And then it wouldn't muddy the waters.
I guess so.
And I'd consider the publisher saying, well, you have to buy your old stock back then because it's just sat there for us and costing us money. But if they just keep wanting to sell them, that's great too.
So one of the best things that you could do as a creator, what I tell people that are like that have books that aren't selling very well, is because usually most of the people that I know get like a wholesale deal on their books, so they'll get it for half, like whatever a wholesaler will pay. I say offer.
Who are these people getting that deal?
It's not.
What entities do you mean are doing that? Like the publisher? Like you mean giving them like the diamond discount, which is what a comic store will get, 50% off cover price sort of thing?
Like,
I mean, I'll do that for bulk orders if people want like 10 copies of my book. Like, 50% discount.
What I'm saying is like for the artist to buy, for the writer to buy the book from, they'll get a. So it's like if you go and they say the books aren't selling, you might say I'll buy the whole lot, but I'm only going to pay like 50% over your cost, not like my cost to take them off your hands.
Or even better, at cost.
Yeah, at cost. So like, I mean, the best would be at cost, right? Because then like the margin between what the wholesale and the regular is still considerable. So like, I mean, I talk.
Well, I didn't mean to cut you off, but like as a creator with a new book coming out, say from a publisher that I haven't done through my other markets, shall we say, I would love to buy extra copies just for myself at cost within the print run, because then I can sell them. But it wouldn't really be. I don't know if it would be fair for the publisher to charge me. Oh, they charge me a bit. Or charge me the costs would be fine. But if they want to charge me a bit more, that's okay. But as long as it's not prohibitively. If it defeats the point of me buying a stock of my own books when they're making them, that's kind of defeats the purpose of spreading the word and actually ultimately promoting the book for them. So
right, exactly. I mean, I usually do 30%, between 30 and 50% above my cost plus shipping. That's my
shipping.
Yeah, because it can be expensive to ship as well.
Oh yeah, that should be borne by the person who wants the damn books. So
right, exactly. So we're just like kind of rambling now about different pieces, but like the good news is that my audience likes rambling stories, so like this is fantastic for them. I hope.
That's pretty much all we do. Sorry.
No, to me it's great because we're talking about like the kinds of stuff that are really important, especially like if you're working for a publisher, because like it's one thing to work for yourself and print your own books, but eventually most people have a dream of working for a publisher, and that puts on a whole nother layer. Like I did not realize that if I were to work for a publisher, they would charge me wholesale price on a book and not like what I would charge, which is like 50% above my cost. Because the difference between the book that I paid $5 for and the retail price of $40 means that they're paying $20 instead of like $8. That's a huge margin that like if you're not negotiating properly or you don't know the numbers, like you could get really screwed paying $12 more per book if you want to get 100 copies of a book.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, the way you phrased it, I'm not going to say I have a problem with it, but I have a different perspective. So when you say work for a publisher, to me, that implies work for hire, which means, you're just working literally for the publisher. Publisher's paying some money to go away, and they have their book, and they can do what they want with it. But when it's a creator-owned book, I would use the term working with a publisher. And if a publisher's smart, they will work with a creator, because the creator, more than anyone else, not just a balance sheet, have the interest of that book and promoting that book and making money off that book, obviously, so they can eat. So a smart publisher, I would say, would definitely make sure a creator has copies of the book one way or another and help spread the word and promote it. And that should do nothing but help future sales.
Right.
Especially with extra volumes. So.
Yeah, and because, I mean, when you're working with a creator at the beginning, at the outset, like your job, you're hiring somebody or you're working with somebody a lot for the potential at the beginning of that creator, knowing that, like, hopefully that first book sells and that's great. Hopefully the second book sells and that's great. But you're really hoping that by the time you hit that third, fourth, fifth book, they're generating quite a bit of revenue for you. And so you're trying to work with a creator who is going to build, who you can work with and build with for the long term.
Yeah, I mean, but not every creator obviously thinks that way, unfortunately. And I don't mean that in a negative way. They're just not aware. They don't have a business sense of or even a career plan necessarily. But I mean, I don't do books with 5 volumes normally. I do miniseries, and then they get collected into a graphic novel. But I also try to sell, not myself in an egotistical way, but sort of like, and I'm not comparing myself talent-wise, obviously, but like a David Lynch film is a David Lynch film, so you see it because it's a David Lynch film, not because it's the third in a trilogy of a certain film. And same with Tarantino. It's like you go for the experience of that creative person. So I can do that, hopefully, and build a back catalog regardless of the stories I'm telling. They're not like all in a chain, like The Walking Dead, which is a massive, huge thing. But if it's not The Walking Dead, it'll see it won't sell as much, obviously, because it's not Walking Dead. That's a very particular thing. But I try to spread my appeal out across all the things I do that are with my own voice, at least. So I still look at the long tail economics of that. So hopefully a publisher will be investing in me. But then I have an actual career. I've been around for way too long. So
right,
it's a bit different when you start.
You do have a brand. I mean, like when you look at Ben Templesmith, it looks like a Ben Templesmith book. It doesn't look like anybody else's book. You immediately go, I know who did that book, and if you like the Ben Templesmith brand, then like you will probably buy that book because you know like what to expect inside of it. Which I mean, I think is one of the most important parts for marketing and branding, because you want your little piece of the internet. Like you have a little piece of the internet and like a little piece of a con that people go, I want that thing. And like, I want him to make that thing. And basically if Ben makes a thing, I'm at least going to give it a shot.
Yeah. I mean, I'm lucky in that my style looks a certain way and not many people can replicate it. And I'm rather unique that way. I'm a niche guy, or niche guy, however you want to say it. But, what I also try to do in that is it's the stories I try to tell relatively in the same ballpark, like the vibe and the quirkiness that I seem to have is what I want to be consistent with. So I won't do a horror book and then suddenly do a superhero romance book or something like that, if that exists. Because that's, even with my art style, that's a totally different book. And people are like, oh, I liked his previous thing. So I try to be consistent in that, in the genre. Not completely the same thing every time, obviously, but everything should have the same vibe, the same quirk, and they know that if they liked the previous experience, hopefully they will like the new experience because it's the same thing that they liked, except it's a different story.
Right, like Tim Burton.
Yeah, without Les Burton.
I know, but like Tim Burton does like animated stuff and stop motion stuff and like live action stuff, but it's very much like, not that you and Tim Burton are analogous, but like
he's actually the one example I use. I wish he would change it up a little bit more, because it's like I'm tired of Tim Burton. But he's a very good example to use. It's just that I would use David Lynch or Tarantino more in style and the fact that I know Tarantino's not going to make a film where someone's not getting shot in the face, but the story will be completely different. But the vibe, the dialogue are there, and the feel, So I'll always see a Tarantino film. So I don't know. That's what I'm trying to go for.
Right. No, I mean, it's part of like building Like, I don't like long stories. I like things that are like Terry Pratchett stuff and like Douglas Adams, which are like there's a universe there, or like Stephen King, where there's a universe there, and if you want to look for it, you can look for it, but like you don't have to look for it. Like you can just enjoy each thing as its own piece of this like overall world.
Exactly. And it still allows the creator to have fun and dabble in new things, because the creator doesn't want to do the same thing over and over again. But you want to be in the same wheelhouse, sort of, hopefully, mostly.
Right, exactly. Okay, so we need to work towards wrapping up, but I want to ask you if you could go back and like talk to young Ben.
Reversion rights.
That's what you would say. Like, what like is that like
understanding what they were at all, knowing they existed. No, please finish the question.
No, like I mean, you can say reversion rights or other things that you said, but like, what couple of things would you tell them to make sure that like they didn't have as much heartache as you had in your career? You or somebody else. You could say some other like young.
You want the honest answer?
Yeah, of course I want the honest answer.
Don't go into business with other people until you know how they really treat money. Because that's. Like if you're looking to do the next step and like say form your own little publisher or do a thing, that's a very big step, especially if you're on the hook financially and you're with say another person that treats money like it's all theirs, or that it's just theirs to spend. And business is business. And when you're a commercial artist, say, you have to really understand some of the business side of things and be mindful of that and frugal. Because actually, the one thing as a creator, a lot of people don't understand is we don't get paid very often sometimes. We're talking months of, between paychecks or royalty checks, say. So you have to learn to budget and how to manage your own money and all sorts of things like that. And that's stuff they don't normally teach in school, apparently, which they should.
Yeah, I think
I would tell myself that, yes.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing that I spoke at an educators conference a while ago, and I was like, this is the most important thing that I do all year. Like not making like this conversation, because if I can get through to the educators in this room about turning your art into a business and having better business concepts and how to teach business concepts to artists, then we won't have so many artists who come up to me at shows asking, why didn't I learn this in school? Which breaks my heart every single time.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that are just literally, I mean, that's the reality of America is a lot of people work paycheck to paycheck. But if you're smart about it, you put a little bit aside, or, well, that's savings, but you build your own house rather than just rent, creatively speaking. So that you can build on the income from your work, your previous work, as to help fund your current work. So I used to be very good at that. Then I went into business, and it wasn't necessarily my fault, but I was left with a lot less money, so I'm rebuilding that again. So I think that is the biggest life lesson with money and comic books and creative stuff in general, is how to manage your money, your income, make it work.
Well, I mean, I like what you said about the partnerships, because like I've had many companies, and most of them were fallen by the team involved not being all on the same page.
Well, it's like a marriage, and one of the most important things in a marriage is the finances. and the fight's about finances. So you really have to be very sure about how other people, if they're treating money the same way you do, or if they think it's all theirs and is meant for their lunch every day on the company card instead of paying for shipping of books and things like that. So, there's priorities and sanity. And you sound like a cluey guy. I think you'd understand that much.
Yes, you're speaking right down into my soul right now.
Yeah, but everyone has at least one bad experience with that sort of thing before they learn, unfortunately. So.
Yeah, and I don't like. Unfortunately, like a lot of times I go, you're just gonna have to have it. Like you can like you just gonna. Sometimes I'm like, you just. Like, I'm going to give you all the warning signs, but you're just going to have that experience. And like, I hate it. Like, I'm going to ache for you while you're having it. But I hope that at least some of the people listening to this, will be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be in that partnership, because maybe our voices, I feel that way about artists too. Like a lot of people ask me how to find like how I tend to have good luck with artists, knock on wood. And I say,
paying them is the biggest one I find.
Well, yes, but I also find like
work is the best.
Yeah, yeah. So yes,
tougher.
Yes, but like I find like I spend years sometimes looking for the right artist for a project because I want to make sure that like we're on the same page with that project.
Oh yeah, that's a creative marriage, and that's a whole other ballgame. But yeah. No, I think the story of comics is really failed relationships, both creatively between creators that way, and also like failed publishers and just failed business. I mean, you've seen, remember the news of like CrossGen and a whole bunch of publishers that sort of disappeared overnight, and a bunch of creative people were left owed money and all that sort of stuff. So like figuring out the warning signs and figuring out if you have an understanding at all of the business side of things is like you should know when maybe to leave early sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I like to think of it like looking behind at the end of the Matrix when Neo can finally see the code behind it. Like if you can have a little bit of business sense, you can see behind you can see the code of the Matrix and like almost see like what's going to happen before it happens.
Yeah. I've always thought there should be a creator summit or something where other older creators can actually just tell people these things exist, the newer guys or girls.
You just named the ethos of this show, which is like having older creators and younger creators telling people who are behind them like what to look out for and what to do.
Yeah. Well, a lot of creators get very competitive though, and sort of want to keep their own thing because they feel. I'm not going to say they feel threatened, but there's an aspect to that. But like, I don't compete with anyone. My style's my style, so I'm happy to tell anyone how I do things, and if they can replicate that with their stuff, more power to them.
That's great. All right, so I promised my friend Walter, who is the basis of why I know you at all, because you're the reason why he got into doing comics.
Oh God!
And
sorry,
Walter. That he could ask you one question, and so this is his question for you. Why do you come back to comics when you could be doing other art, fine art, concept, marketing art, etc.?
So advertising is soulless, and you don't get anything from it except some really good money, I guess, but you have to work hard for that. Fine art is full of rather pretentious people sometimes, but also like a gallery scene that's highly political, and it gets very political there. And I'm not going to use the swear word, but I don't deal with that stuff much. I just do my own thing. And comics, honestly, I love storytelling. I love the medium, and it's an American-made sort of medium. It's as American as apple pie, and it's very underappreciated in America, unfortunately. I just like telling stories, and I like meeting the people that I tell the stories to. So I like that whole experience. So I just have stories, and I want to tell them. And they're like cheap movies on paper, really. So, and I don't pretend to ever want to manage like 100 people to make a damn movie and millions of dollars in a budget. So comics are the next best thing.
I love that. I was talking to one of my publisher friends, and she was like, "Why did you get in?" I was like, "Why did you get into?" I was like, "Because it's cheaper than making movies. Like it's like making a movie on paper." And I love movies, and I love visual storytelling, and like.
And Hollywood does that now too. So.
Right. Exactly. All right. So. This is when all of the people that are listening to the show are going to come back and listen, who've been like tuned out because they're drawing or they're reading in their car.
They were bored by me talking.
Yes, and they are. I guess I shouldn't say reading in their car, but they're listening in their car, and this is your chance to impart them the one piece of wisdom that you want them to remember for the rest of the week, the month, their life. Like if you could give them one piece of advice, whether you've said it already or not, that they're going to come back and listen to now, what would it be?
You create, as a creator, you're worth something, so never give your work away for free.
Awesome.
With the proviso that maybe right at the beginning you have to do a little bit of that to get somewhere and to make connections and to, yeah. But generally speaking, no, you're always worth something, so never work for free. Never work for exposure, because that's sort of the most. You wouldn't ask a doctor or a lawyer to do that, although lawyers do work pro bono, but that's for a big payoff usually, or morals. But yeah. Spec work lessens everyone else. It lessens all of us.
I love it. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you want to talk about?
No. I don't know. It's just a rambling conversation. I'm happy to chat. So that's all I can think of, really.
Awesome. All right. Do you have anything coming up in the near future that we can look out for?
Well, I have. If anyone knows my work, they've probably, hopefully, heard of Wormwood Gentleman Corpse, which is like my funny black humor horror thing. That's coming back. It's in previews right now to order through the direct market. I finished it on Patreon, thanks to my patrons. And I'll have a bunch of new Kickstarters and a new Patreon project actually starting this week, which is a Neanderthal revenge horror comic. So lots of blood and horrible things. But,
Neanderthals.
Yeah, and if you really want to find out what I'm doing, it's I do it all online first, pretty much. So that's where you want to go first, rather than a comic book store. But it all will hopefully wind up in comic book stores, as we discussed.
And is the best place to find them at the patreon.com/Templesmith?
Yes, yeah. It has a horrible search function, so yeah, patreon.com/Templesmith is where I am.
Excellent. Anywhere else they can find you online?
Everywhere. I infect the internet like a bad STD. I'm Templesmith on generally every social media. So Templesmith, one word. Just search me and you'll find me.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Ben. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. And I don't think I swore a single time in this interview, which is a record for me.
So hope you enjoyed that one with Ben Templesmith. If you did, make sure to find him online and say thanks. And don't forget to pick up the first chapter of my new book, Sell Your Soul, How to Build Your Creative Career, absolutely free by heading to GoSellYourSoul.com. And if you like free stuff, head on over to writingandsellingcommunity.com to join my Facebook group. It's a cool thing if you like that kind of thing. All right, wannabes and creators, I'll see you next time.